Today I will be reviewing the poem After Blenheim by Robert Southey. Okay, now Blenheim was a small village in southern Germany. Okay, Blenheim was a small village in southern Germany where a battle took place between England and France. On which year? In 1704 on 13th August. In this poem, there are three main characters. You have Caspar and his two grandchildren, Wilhelmine and Peterkin. Now, war poem in which the poet condemns war. The poet shows the horrors of the war, and these two children, Peterkin and Wilhelmine, are the mouthpieces of the poet to condemn war. In this poem, we will also see old Caspar. He is one of the victims of the war, but he has a very complacent attitude. He has a very complacent attitude towards war. He has resigned to the fate that loss of life and property, death and destruction is a common thing to take place in great wars. He has resigned to the fate, he has resigned to the fact that great wars come at a price of the great victory. So his complacent attitude is similar to the attitude of the politicians for whom the loss of innocent lives and the damage to property is a common thing in war, and they define it as collateral damage. And they define it as collateral damage. It means that the loss of lives, the death of soldiers, the death of civilians, the loss of life and property is a common thing to take place in great wars. So war comes at a cost of loss of life and property. Now, in this poem, we will see that Caspar is sitting outside his cottage and his grandchildren are playing outside. Peterkin is playing by the riverside and Wilhelmine is playing in the fields. Now Peterkin finds a very large, round and smooth object by the riverside, and he brings it rolling to his grandfather to ask him what it is. Now Wilhelmine was also curious to know about this large, round and smooth thing that Peterkin has found, and both of them, with that curiosity, they go to their grandfather Caspar to ask about it. Now Caspar looks at this large, round and smooth things and he takes a deep sigh. And then he tells his grandchildren that this is the skull of a soldier who died in the great battle of Blenheim. Now the children become more curious to know about the war. They ask their grandfather why the war, what are the reasons for which the war was fought, and everything they want to know about the war. Now Caspar says that finding these large, round and smooth, that is the skull, finding this skull was a common thing for him. because whenever he plows his fields, every now and then he could find these skulls of dead soldiers. Now children are horrified by this fact, and so they want to know more and more about this battle. Caspar could only say that it was a great battle that was fought between England and France, in which the English emerged victorious over French. Now Caspar was one of the victims of the war. His own house was burnt down, and his father and mother has to abandon their house and run away from the village in order to save their lives, because the French army had attacked their house when they were living in Blenheim. After that, they were rendered homeless. Now both the children are horrified by this fact, that how can it be a great victory? Now Caspar again and again refers to this victory as great victory, or he refers to it as famous victory. Now these two terms are used again and again in the poem. Again and again he refers to it as a great victory and famous victory. But the children are not able to understand when the war has caused such a great of loss of life and property, how it was a famous victory or how it was a great victory. Caspar is not able to answer the question about the causes of the war or what benefits that the war had. Only he could say that it was a great victory or a famous victory. Now in this poem, towards the end, we will see two characters. One is Prince Marlborough and another is Prince Eugene. Now these two people are glorified for the victory of English over French. The reasons behind which the war was fought and what was the benefit of the war. But all that the Caspar could answer was that it was a famous victory. Caspar refers to it as a famous victory which comes at the cost of so many lives. So now let us look at the poem. It was a summer evening, old Caspar's work was done, and he before his cottage door was sitting in the sun, and by him spotted on the green his little grandchild Wilhelmine. So here in the first stanza we see that it was summer evening, old Caspar was sitting outside his cottage and his little granddaughter Wilhelmine was playing in the fields. So this is all about in the first stanza. In the first stanza, one word you will find here is sported. Sported means played. So Wilhelmine was playing outside his cottage. Second stanza. She saw her brother Peterkin roll something large and round, which he beside the rivulet in playing there had found. He came to ask what he had found that was so large and smooth and round. So in the second stanza, we will find that Peterkin has found something large and smooth and round while playing by the rivulet. Rivulet is a small stream. So while Peterkin was playing by the small stream, he found something which was large, smooth and round. So he was curious to know what this object was, and so rolling it, he takes it to his grandfather to ask about this large, smooth and round thing. Old Caspar took it from the boy who stood expectant by, and then the old man shook his head and with a natural sigh, "'Tis some poor fellow's skull," said he, "who fell in the great victory." So old Caspar takes this large, smooth and round thing in his hand, and both the children Peterkin and Wilhelmine, they are very curious to know what is it. And so they ask their grandfather about it. And Peterkin, after looking at this large, smooth and round thing, he takes a deep sigh. And after some time, he reveals that it was a skull of a dead soldier. It was a skull of a dead soldier who fought the great battle of Blenheim. As I told you earlier, Blenheim was a battle that was fought between England and France, in which England emerged victorious over France. So in that battle, many soldiers have lost their lives, and that it was the skull of one of those dead soldiers. So here is the first time when Casper refers to it as great victory. So now we will see the repetition of this word great victory. I find them in the garden, for there's many hereabout, and often when I go to plough, the ploughshare turns them out. For many thousand men, said he, were slain in that great victory. So here Peterkin then tells the small children that often in his fields, whenever he ploughs the field with his ploughshare, often he finds this skull. Whenever ploughshare, whenever he uses this ploughshare in his fields, most of the time he finds this skull in his field, because many thousands of men were killed in this battle of Blenheim, and their dead bodies were not even given proper burial. Later we will see that their dead bodies lay rotting in the sun, and that's why still today, whenever this Casper, whenever he plows his field, very often he can find the skull coming out of the field. So these were the skulls of the great soldiers who were slain. Slain, one word you will find. Slain means killed. These were the skulls of the great soldiers who were killed in that battle of Blenheim. Now tell us what it was all about, young Peterkin, he cries. In the beginning I told you that the poet uses these two children, Peterkin and Wilhelmine, as his mouthpieces to condemn war. It is an anti-war poem in which the poet is totally against war. He is of the notion that war only brings death and destruction. There is no gain in the war, it only leads to death and destruction. So here both the children, through their innocent behavior, through their innocent nature, he condemns war. And through these innocent children, the poet put forward the question that why was this war fought? And little Wilhelmine looks up with wonder-waiting eyes. Wonder-waiting eyes means curious eyes. Okay, wonder-waiting eyes means curious eyes. Their eyes were curious. They wanted their grandfather to tell them that why this battle was fought, in which so many soldiers were dead that their skulls are still found today in the field. So both the children, curiously, they asked their grandfather that why the battle was fought. Why England and France, they fought this battle with each other. It was the English, Casper cried, who put the French to rout. Rout is the new word that you will find here. Rout means to defeat. Rout means defeat. Rout means defeat. So all Casper could say, he has no answer to it. He could say that it was English who defeated the French. But what they fought each other for, I could not well make out. But everybody said, quoth he, that it was a famous victory. Why the battle was fought? Casper has no answer. He has no idea that why this battle was fought. But because the English won over the French and he was on the winning side, all he could remember that people said it was a famous victory. It was a great victory. Other than this, Caspar is totally unaware of the causes of the war. All he could remember that it was a famous victory. So you see, again and again this word famous victory is brought out. As I told earlier, it brings out the complacent nature of common man, which he has picturized through Caspar. Complacent nature means the people are okay. It's okay for soldiers to lose their life in the war. So when you have war, these casualties, loss of lives, death, destruction, these are very common. So they have given up to the fate that victory comes at the cost of death, and they have accepted this fact. My father lived at Blenheim then, yon little stream hard by. They burnt his dwelling to the ground, and he was forced to fly. Here the word fly means to run away. Okay? Here the word fly means to run away. So with his wife and child he fled, nor had he where to rest his head. So now I told you in the beginning that Caspar himself is one of the victims of the war. So when he was small, his house was burned down, and his mother and father had to leave their house and run away from that place because the French had attacked their place. So they had to run away from that place. From their native place they have to run away, and they were rendered homeless. So this is one of the horrors of the war that the poet has tried to depict, that people not only lose their lives, they lose their homes. They become homeless. Many mothers lose their children lose their father. So these are the horrors of the war that the poet has tried to bring out in this poem. With fire and sword the country round was wasted far and wide. Wasted far and wide means there was mass scale death and destruction. All you could see around is fire, means the houses were put to fire. There were so many people killed around them. People had to run away from their native places. Everywhere there were death and destruction. And many a childing mother, then and newborn baby died, and things like that, you know, must be at every famous victory. So during this, in this stanza, he has described the scenario of the war. He has described the horrors of the war. What are the horrors of the war? The poet in this stanza has described the horrors of war. And what are the horrors of war he has described? The houses were set on fire. People were killed mercilessly. The mothers were killed. Children were killed. Newborn babies were killed. So there was huge, large-scale death and destruction all around them. But ignoring all these, what they say, what people say, that it was a famous victory, and things like this usually happen at a war. They say it was a shocking sight after the field was won. So that line you see, field was won, means battle was won. Once the English defeated the French, for many thousand bodies here lay rotting in the sun. But things like that, you know, must be after a famous victory. So it was after the war. It was a very shocking sight. As I told you before, houses were burned down, people were killed, newborn babies were killed, expectant mothers were killed, and there were thousands of dead bodies of soldiers. They were rotting in the sun. No proper burial was given. It was a horrific sight. But ignoring all this, just because the English won over the French, they say that it was a great battle. It was a famous battle. So you see that poet has very clearly brought out the complacent attitude of the common man, which comes at the death and loss of so many lives. And they are very casual about it, because this has been, common man has been manipulated into believing that these losses are very common, because what is the price to be paid? The victory of their country. So this price has to be paid for the victory of a country in the war. Great praise the Duke of Marlborough and our good Prince Eugene, why it was a very wicked thing, said little Williamine. Nay, 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 my little girl, quoth he, it was a famous victory. So in this stanza, we will come across two people who were responsible for the victory. One is Prince Marlborough and another is Prince Eugene. So these two people are praised heavily by people for the victory of English over French. But once the little girl, I told you in the beginning that the children are the mouthpiece of the poet. So when this little girl hears about the horrors of the war, how the houses were burnt, how the people died and how thousands of soldiers lay rotting in the sun, when she hears this, she calls it a wicked thing. So what is this victory coming on? The victory which is gained at the cost of so many lives. So little children, they understand that this is a horrific thing. This is a wicked thing. But what does Caspar say? No, 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 my little girl. It was a famous victory. And everybody praised the Duke, who did great fight did win. But what good came of it at last? Quoth little Peterkin. Why, that I cannot tell, said he, but it was a famous victory. So everyone in the end, once the battle was won, everyone praised Prince Marlborough and Prince Eugene. And little Peterkin, he asked his grandfather, what good came out of it? Who benefited from this war? And Caspar has no answer. All he could say that it was a famous victory. It was a great victory because their country won, and the price that it has paid, it was ignored. So here we see the complacent attitude of the common man towards war, and how poet, through these little children, he has condemned war. Caspar only knew that it was a famous victory and that their country won the battle, but he could not answer the questions posed by little children, that what was the reason behind the battle and what benefit did the war bring. To all these questions, he had no answer. Okay, so there are three main themes to be discussed in this poem. The first one is man's cruelty towards man. So the first theme in this poem is man's cruelty towards man. So I told you in the beginning itself that this great victory is coming at a price. And what is that price? A man killing another man to gain this famous victory. So it is very ironical to say that so many people are killed, so many people are killing each other, houses are burned down, children are killed, humanity is at stake, but still they call it a famous victory. So in this great war, you can see it is only the politically people are benefiting. It is only the political leaders who are at the benefit, and it is the common man who suffer the most. It is the common man who has to suffer the horrors of the war by losing his children, by losing his house, by losing his dear ones. So war only results in death and destruction, and man killing man, and the price, this is the price they have to pay for this great victory. Now, second theme of this poem is curiosity and lack of it. Now, the children are curious to know that why the battle was fought, but the answer is not, they are not answered. All they have been told by their grandfather that it was a famous victory. So the children become the mouthpiece. The children become the mouthpiece of the poet to condemn war, as he describes the horrors of the war. So their curiosity, the children themselves, they tell you that it was a wicked thing. What good came of the war? But all these questions are not answered. They are the ones who condemn war. They cannot be manipulated into believing that the war, which has led to death and destruction of so many people, can be of any good. So the poet, through the curiosity, using the innocence of the children and using them as their mouthpiece, has condemned war. Another theme that is very prominent is the complacency of common man. Now Casper represents common man who has resigned to his fate that victory comes at the cost of lives. They refer to it as collateral damage. Means the death, loss and destruction is unavoidable if you have to gain such great victory. So this was the poem in short and its theme.